good to see African countries working together. Now, today is Africa Day. It commemorates the founding of the Organization of African Unity, now known as the African Union, on this day, 25th May 1963. Now, the day is aimed at, of course, AU was known as OAU initially. Now let's go to our next infographics that we have for you about this Africa Day. The OAU changed to AU on 26th May 2001. Then the African Union, what we have now is the AU, was formed the next year, that is the year 2002. Now let's take a look at the importance of this day, known as the Africa Day, that is marked every 25th day of May. It's all about reaching back to our roots as Africans, promoting peace and harmony, empowering Africa's youth. How we succeeded in doing that. Of course, we're going to have that debate this morning. And let's take a look at some of the key milestones that Africa has achieved since independence. It's politically free. That cannot be said of all African countries, I'm sure. It has the largest mineral industries in the world. That goes without doubt. And the Free Trade Area Pact that has been signed. Africa alone has 25 Nobel Prize winners, and it also came up with 2 UN Secretary Generals. I believe that is the late Brutus Ghali and Kofi Annan from Ghana. Africa Day, of course, that is going to form the basis of our discussion this morning. In studio, I have Anne Jagi from Africa Rising, as well as Javas Bigambo, who is a governance expert. I'm going to talk to them shortly. And joining us all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, via way of Skype, is Jackie Atieno. She's making it big there. I'm going to engage her shortly. She's going to tell us more on this very important day. There you go. I can see her there on Skype. But first, let me begin with Anne from Africa Rising. Anne, from 1963 up until now, from your organization's name, is Africa literally rising?
Thank you very much, Yusuf, for inviting Africans Rising to speak about this day. Of course, I would say Africa is rising, but it's not rising so fast as we think, because there are so many issues that are taking place, I think, in this country, in different parts of this continent. Issues to do with corruption. Of course, they have sort of brought Africa, they have made it not to escalate as fast as it should be in terms of rising. So for me, I think it's gradually just rising. But I think if we can be able to fight some of these vices, then we will get there.
Javas? Good morning and good to see you.
Good to see you too after a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be very critical in this. So do you think that do you agree with Anne that we're heading towards the right direction?
Well, first I'm perturbed that there is a day marked to celebrate Africa. Because the question is, who identified and set aside that day for the celebration of Africa? Is it Africans themselves? And is Africa really rising or Africa is shrinking? Because every time you turn your head in this continent, you see ruins of bad leadership, ruins of integrity, ruins of ethics and ethos and pathos, etc. And today, if at all we were to look back with the benefit of retrospect at the period of 1960s when African countries were fighting for independence and liberation, that struggle and what they stood for, the Nkurumas of that time, the Lumumbas of that time, and what we are seeing today, it would shame the struggle of the likes of Nkrumah and Nyerere and all these leaders, what sent Mandela to prison and others. It would make us wonder, or any critical mind and objective mind to wonder, what is it that made us go wrong? When the Nkrumas were handing over the baton, did it fall off the hands of those leaders of the time who were taking it up from them? Because the ideals that they stood for and championed are things that we do not stand for today.
And I'm sure the things that they've talked about, the vision they had for Africa is about peace and harmony. I think that's not the case. We're seeing several, violence taking place in South Sudan, Central African Republic, DRC. The list is endless. Somalia is also there. So from your own point of view, do you think we have lived to the expectation of, for our forefathers, as Javas has rightly pointed out?
Not quite, because I think I would want to echo his sentiments on the same, because what has happened is there's a lot that is happening in Africa, especially some of those countries that you've just highlighted. Most of them, there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of also corruption, there's a lot of those extrajudicial killings, like even in Cameroon, as we speak right now, it's one of those countries that people are being shot, just... like, I don't know, like animals, not even like human beings. And, there's a lot of violation of also human rights. So for me, I feel still we are not yet there. We are not yet there. And that is the reason why sometimes when our organization, Africans Rising, it's actually, it is working now. It's sort of like, it is in solidarity. Like right now, we are working with different countries in the continent. And we are pushing for that, because some of those things, we do not support them at all. We are really trying to see how, like, why would people be killed just innocent? I mean, we are losing innocent lives just because of the greed of some people, or even just because... Especially those in leadership. Exactly. So those are some of the... That is the reason why we are working now with... We are trying to bring in more people, even in diaspora in Africa, and also trying to sort of like work with the organizations and also individuals, to champion for peace, justice, and also seek for justice, of course, for those people. And also... And speaking about diaspora, I understand Jackie is now ready with me. Also joining us all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, is Jackie Itno, who is the African fashion industry. And I'm ready to Skype with her. Now, Jackie, good morning. If you could hear me, how are you celebrating or marking this day that, many Africans are talking about, the Africa Day?
How I'm celebrating Africa Day, first of all, is having this conversation with you. And what we will do in Atlanta is just hang out with our Kenyan families and then families from other countries. And what we'll do is celebrate it this coming weekend.
I think we've lost Jackie there. It's important we continue with this conversation in studio. Now, Javas, it's good to be critical about Africa, because that's the only way we can achieve change in this continent. And there's one thing that we're not going to avoid when it comes to Africa, and that has everything to do with corruption. And there are those who are saying that this continent receives about $50 billion every single year through aid. But there are those who come from school of thought saying, this is what is even making Africa much more poor, much more corrupt. What do you have to say about that?
Africa is rich, yet poor. When you read Dambisa Moyo's book, Dead Aid, you would appreciate why Africa should not actually be angling for aid from the West. But today we are stuck in the manacles of aid, and we believe that we cannot stand on our own 2 feet except for the aid from the West. When you read Walter Rodney's text on how Europe underdeveloped Africa, you'd appreciate how materialism and capitalism continues to choke Africa and African leadership. Today, it is difficult for us and for me even to have the courage to celebrate the liberation of Africa and independence. What we are seeing is not African liberation. We are seeing African frustration and degradation. Because look at Congo. Nearly the entire world depends on timber from Congo, depends on minerals and gold from Africa, including Congo. But do we find peace in Congo? Not many developed countries want to see peace in the Congo. When you look at what is happening in the South Sudan with their oil, etc., the youngest nation on earth, and yet we have, for example, a critical and important institution such as the African Union, which is literally sitting on its hands when South Sudan is dying, literally. You wonder, what is it that we need to celebrate about Africa? Africa has refused to write its own history, to tell its own story. When, for example, you read the letter that was written from Thaisville prison by Patrice Emery Lumumba of Congo to his wife Pauline, and he said in part, and I quote just the last part, that Africa should have to write its own history, not history that's dictated by Paris or Belgium or the Western nations or the United Nations. We need to have Africa that realizes what it is as a continent, what it stands for, and what direction it wants to go. Today, Most African leaders, before they even make any critical decision, they would want to ask themselves, how will the West feel about this decision? And I think it's important for African leaders to rise, stand on their own 2 feet, and determine the direction of a nation. When Steve Bantu Biko of South Africa was rising to say he writes what he likes and he wants to have a new thinking for the Africans, we have refused to take up the spirit of Stephen Bantu Biko. He died and died with his struggle and his ideals. Today, most young people in this country have refused to rise and speak truly from their hearts and minds about determining the leadership that they want. And that's why in this country of ours, you find a scandal happening such as NYS, and then some people have got the audacity to tell us that we need to disband NYS and not fight corruption.
That's
our laws are not the problem,
Mm-hmm.
NYS is not the problem. The problem is about integrity, values, etc. It's about us, the people.
And I'm going to come to you shortly. I understand that Jackie is now with me. She's joining us by way of Skype from Atlanta, Georgia. Jackie, sorry we lost you earlier. Perhaps can you tell us how you're celebrating Africa Day there in Atlanta, Georgia, and how has it been like for you as an African entrepreneur who is doing business in the U.S.?
What we'll do to celebrate African Day is hang out first with Kenyans, our people and families, and then we also get together with Africans from other countries. We're going to be meeting this weekend with a set of Nigerian friends, and we're having a jollof rice festival. So that's how we're going to spend time with each other, celebrating the holiday.
And from your own perspective, do you think Africa has made a lot of gains, or do you think African governments have failed since independence? Because there are issues to do with corruption that's still very much rampant in Africa. So what do you have to say about that, very briefly?
Corruption is high, absolutely, but I also believe it also starts with the people by deciding who. First of all, it starts with you, and then by deciding who you vote for and actively vote for the people who really are qualified to get into office, as opposed to voting on tribal lines. That would definitely make a difference. So do we have corruption? Absolutely. Just because it starts with us as a people, where we choose to go the tribalistic route as opposed to people who are supposed to actually be in office. We need to start at the grassroots level of just us as humans,
And economically speaking, Jackie, I understand you're an entrepreneur. How does the future of Africa look like from your own perspective? Because we are always told that, Africa is rising, Africa is still emerging. When are we going to get there?
I'm going to come from the part of being an entrepreneur as just the things that I do. Will Africa get there in the near future? Based on corruption and all that we have going on, I'm not sure the speed at which we'll get there. However, for what I do is promote African fashion. I get what we have in Kenya and sell it here and promote it here in the United States. So in that way, that promotes the people we have on ground, and it also promotes the fashion and culture to the United States here.
Okay, one final question about your line of trade, that is fashion. How are Americans receiving, styles or, fashions from Kenya and by extension Africa? And is it a sector that has some sort of a potential, perhaps, in the U.S.?
Yes, it does have a lot of potential due to the fact that, one, a lot of them are not able to get on ground in Kenya just to see what we have. So what they'll see is either what they see online or what they will read about. And then, Kenya is either publicized in a good light or in a bad light. So what I do specifically is ensure that we get what we have on ground from the tradesmen in Kenya and ensure that it comes here so that the fashion, first of all, is publicized in great light. And two, what we do is also teach the people how to wear the fashion. So as opposed to not knowing how to wear it with everyday fashion that they have whenever they're going to the office or, they're out to the mall and stuff like that. What we do is have them, wear it and mix and match it well to match with what they have on a regular basis. That's what I do about my business.
Very much, Jackie Itno. Good to have you on the show. Many thanks. That is Jackie Itno, who's a Kenyan entrepreneur making it big in the U.S. And of course, right in studio, we'll still continue with the debate about Africa on a day Africans, and by extension, the world is marking Africa Day. It's a day that is marked every 25th day of May. We're going to take a very short break. It's exactly 27 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Stay with us.